Hello, I'm Richard Bozomowski, one of the producers at Cyberpunk 2077.
So, Richard, tell us what you're showing here at Gamescom.
At Gamescom, we are showing one of the quests that is more or less in the middle, from the middle of the game. It's essentially the moment where V needs to find very skilled netrunners in order to access the cyberspace, in order to have a chance to find Alt Cunningham. Those netrunners are the Voodoo Boys, considered to be the best netrunners in Night City. And while we find them, they need to test our capabilities. So they send us on a mission to an abandoned mall where there are some enemies, the Animals, another gang that we can either fight or sneak around, depending on what the player chooses essentially in the game.
This was a lot different than the gameplay you showed 2 years ago at E3, where it was
a year ago.
Yeah, a year ago. It was different. It was a different setting, a different area of the world,
yes.
of your hub world. I want to say it's like a Miami kind of inspired beach. What's that area called again?
This is Pacifica.
Yeah, it's Pacifica.
Pacifica is kind of interesting. It was a district that was heavily invested in, like back in the 2060s, by major corporations. But after a while, there was like this news outbreak that caused all the corporations to feel like a new corporate war. Corporate wars are a thing in the Cyberpunk universe. I don't want to elaborate too much on this right now. The players will get to know the history of those. So after those corporations got like scared, they pulled out the money and left Pacifica unfinished. And with time, life crawled back in, and as gangs took over the territory, minorities appeared, and the Voodoo Boys are one of the gangs, but they are actually trying to make sure that their people are safe, they are taking care for the community, and they are very skilled netrunners.
So let's talk about the character customization, not just visually, which you guys did touch upon in the presentation, but your abilities themselves. In the demo, we got taken through one time as a stealthy hacker.
Yes.
And then another time with like a brute force strength cybernetics.
Exactly.
Talk about the differences between the playstyles.
So we mention very often three distinguished playstyles: the Soul, the Netrunner, the Techie. It is not like that we are enforcing this choice on the player, either in the character creation or somewhere through the game. You're never picking one of those three. It's more or less like a set of tools in those three categories that the player will be able to take and mix up in order to create their own character, playing however they want. In this particular demo, as you said, that we were playing first the Netrunner, which was like hacking cameras, who was able to hack enemies as well, and the strong Solo, who was ripping up those doors, like ripping out the turret, and basically with brute force dealing with situations. The third playstyle is the Techie. The Techie is pretty technical. He is capable of crafting, like more efficient crafting. Everybody is able to craft, but the Techie has like some added bonuses. It's easier to find ingredients. He also has access to the Flathead. But again, by saying that a Techie has access to the Flathead, it does not mean that you have to be a Techie. You just need to invest the appropriate points and acquire the appropriate cyberware in order to use it.
As you level up, you get more skill points to put in whatever tree you want to play as, whether
yeah,
it's hacking
you can
or
mix
cybernetics.
it freely.
Are you able to change that at any given time, or are you given certain points in the story where you can reset it and reinvest your points if you don't like the way your character's turning out, or what?
Well, personally, I don't know the answer if you can reset it. Like in The Witcher, we did have something like that. There was, if I recall, there was a potion that was resetting the points. So I'm not able to answer that. But when it comes to let's say that you are playing the game and halfway through, you are playing as a Netrunner, and halfway through you consider, I would rather be more Arnold Schwarzenegger. So it's something like a real person being a doctor for the half of his life, and at one point he decides he wants to become an architect. He can do that. Everybody can do that. He needs to learn certain skills in order to be a capable architect. But while he learns and after he learns, he is still a doctor. He's both things, right? So this is something that the players will be able to do. So you can either go like super universal or try to build like a hybrid build.
So is there a specific way you like to play Cyberpunk 2077? Do you have a style that you like to do in the game?
I always am a player that likes to keep this window of opportunity open to be very universal. So I would probably invest heavily like in all of the three directions in order to choose my approach before I go into a mission. For instance, like if I get a contract that is all about the money, and I have no particular beef as a character, or I don't have a problem with what is actually happening in this given scenario as a person, then I will probably go in super stealthy, like hack my things through. Why should I kill anybody? Like it's about the money, it's about getting the contract done, whatever it is about. But like in certain moments in the story, myself, I would probably be like, all right, that's a bad dude. I'll get my guns and just storm into his house and, get what I need. And because he's just a really bad person and I don't like what he's done to a friendly NPC or something like that.
As a producer, one of your main jobs, I'm guessing, is to keep everyone on track and hit those milestones. Can you talk a little about what's involved in that? And because you have a big team with a lot of people working on different things in different parts of the game, and so, what some of those challenges are to you.
The thing that happened after The Witcher is that we also expanded the team. So we are currently sitting at around 300 developers in 3 different studios. And the key factor here is like ensuring proper communication. Like as a producer, you are essentially making sure to create an environment in which either your artists or your developers, programmers, designers can focus on their work and 100%, meaning they don't have to deal with bureaucratic bullshit. You're taking care of that, and while also keeping them like informed about other things that are happening in the studio. And this can manifest in either setting up communication pipelines that are making sure that everybody relevant gets the important information, but also you should be this kind of gatekeeper. Since as a producer you're taking part in a lot of meetings, and sometimes from the weirdest direction from a team you would never have thought that could have influence on what your team is currently doing, might come something that will heavily affect what your team is doing. So you're the guy that has to like pinpoint this down, get the details, and get your lead and your team informed that, hey, actually we didn't thought about that, but those guys are doing this and that, so let's sit together, adjust before one of the two sides does something, not knowing what the other team does, essentially creating afterwards a situation where something has to be redone.
Can you talk a little about the work-life balance at CD Projekt Red? Your studio is actually more inclined to treat their employees, pretty well compared to other studios out there.
Yeah, well, it's exactly as we were mentioning it in the Kotaku article. Like when I remember when I joined CD Projekt, I was very mesmerized even with how professional the people tend to be. They are very passionate about their jobs. They come into work with like this energy that wants to give everything they've got while creating the best things, and I believe that this is possible because of the same fact. If you come into a workspace where you see that people are passionate about things that they are doing, then yourself become more passionate as well.
What's the biggest challenge you face as a producer on Cyberpunk 2077?
Well, it actually will be connected to the previous answer I gave, like communication, because as I said, there are a lot of studios, especially, that's one thing, and especially like a while back when we were like still in pre-production, we were looking for what Cyberpunk actually is. And back then, a lot of departments were doing like some, searching for what will be the gameplay design, what will the city look like, how the quests will play out, what the plot is going to be. And it was a very dynamic time where a lot of communication was needed in order to ensure that each single person in the studio is efficiently spending their time.
So how does someone become a video game producer? Like what path, what advice could you give to them if they wanted to get into specifically producing in a video game?
You certainly have to be a person that stays on top of things. Like you have to be the guy who has an overview of what is happening. You can't get pinned down to too much details if it's at this given moment not necessary. From my personal experience, I can say that it was very beneficial for me to join the industry as a QA, because firstly I worked outside of the industry. I was a strategy consultant and then a product manager in completely different industries.
Yeah.
But at one point, and this was somewhat resembling as a producer's job, but at one point I figured that I would rather do something cool. And I wanted to join the industry, and I joined as a QA because you learn so much as a QA from the job, from the industry. You see how like games are being built, like what are the development stages, like what is important when. You are learning how to use production tools, and it really gives you a good perspective for the days that might come after as a producer, knowing that you have been in a situation as a QA where there have been some kind of specific issues that might appear again now that you are a producer, and you can be again on top of that. Like you have to think ahead a lot.
What fun question. What does Cyberpunk mean to you? Like, for example, like I think when someone says Cyberpunk, I immediately think Blade Runner. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Well, if I would go along those lines, I would actually say Cyberpunk 2020, because this is like the first Cyberpunk setting I got to know when I was a teenager, and for me it was like that. Like I wanted to join the studio for like two reasons. First and foremost, because CD Projekt is considered, and I can actually right now confirm that, as a studio that does games for gamers, they do games for gamers while they self are gamers, right? So there is like this mutual respect. We know that the game costs, I don't know, $60 at launch, and $60 is $60. So we want to maximize out like what the player is getting in this package, and we deeply care about this experience. And the second part, what I wanted to join CD Projekt, was actually why it's Cyberpunk. Well, it's this franchise I always knew and found so cool, and it turned out that it actually was very cool. When I came in the first day, I was surprised that it was a first person, because I was imagining it to be a third person. But the second right after, I was like, all right, whatever the perspective, like, give me the controller.
If you could get a cybernetic augmentation in real life from the game, which one would you get and why? Probably
some Kiroshi optical system eyes. There are a lot of possibilities, like using them to zoom in things, see thermal vision, night vision, like, you know, just have like my messages pop up or something like that, just to get a bit more like into the cyber world.